Scott Sedgley.
Here.
Bernie Narvaez.
Here.
Liz Alessio.
Here.
Amber Manfree.
Here.
Mark Joseph.
Here.
Pierre Washington.
Here.
Pam Reeves. Eric Knight. Paul Doring.
Here.
Michelle Deasy. Donald Williams. Kevin Eisenberg.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any modifications? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Washington and Manfree. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Chair, we do need a roll call vote as we do have one director attending remotely today.
Oh, rats. Okay, good point. Then let's do a roll call vote.
Scott Sedgley.
Yes.
Bernie Narvaez.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Amber Manfree.
Yes.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Pierre Washington.
Yes.
Pam Reeves.
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Michelle Deasy. Donald Williams.
Yes.
Kevin Eisenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. And I say that only for expediting the meeting and not any inherent disdain for the Brown Act and all of its amendments. Whether that's sincere or not is another thing, but that's what I'm saying. All right, so much for being rude. Public comment. Please, anyone from the public who wishes to speak, either online or in person, including people who want to criticize me for being so snarky. All right, no public comment. Chairpersons or board members updates. I've said more than enough. Any board member comments? All right. Executive director update, saving it. Thank you. All right. First up is a public hearing. 8.1, public hearing adopting the annual operating budgets for fiscal years 26-27 and 27-28 and the annual appropriations limits. All right. And Director Knight is present. Take it away.
All right. So good afternoon, Chair Joseph and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I am the Director of Finance for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. For this public hearing, for this item, staff is presenting the proposed two-year biennial budget for the tax agency for fiscal years 26-27 and 27-28 for review, public comment, and formal adoption by the board through Resolution 26-01-TA. The biennial budget outlines anticipated revenues and expenditures associated with administration of Measure U Transportation Sales Tax Program and establishes the authority's spending authority over the next 2 fiscal years. So for this slide in front of you, the proposed budget totals $29,709,000 for fiscal year 27 and $30,359,000 for fiscal year 28. Other than a set aside for agency administration and for highway projects and planning, nearly all the funding is passed through directly to the local jurisdictions and their transportation programs in accordance with the voter-approved sales tax expenditure plan. Next slide, please. So just for some background, Measure T completed its 7th and final year as a measure on June 30th, 2025. And although revenues were over the $25 million mark for the 3rd consecutive year, countywide sales tax generations continue to operate in a period of economic uncertainty shaped by high interest rates, evolving tariff policies, geopolitical issues, shifting global fuel prices, and increasingly cautious consumer spending with a focus on affordability. Although total sales tax generations for Measure T was $25 million for the 3rd consecutive years, receipts were 1% lower than the previous years, experiencing a small but noticeable softening in revenues, driven mainly by ongoing weakness in the business industry segments, such as winery industry, as well as such as the winery industry. Consumers continue to prioritize essential purchases, which weighed on traditional retail stores, such as discount outlets and home furnishings, even as online retailers continue to capture more spending. On July 1st, 2025, Measure U replaced Measure T and revised the formula each jurisdiction will receive in revenues. Looking ahead, NVTA anticipates continued volatility and uncertainty for the next few years. Because of this, staff expects the current year, fiscal year 26, revenues to remain generally flat with the potential for slight improvement in the next couple of years. Staff will, of course, continue monitoring economic developments and adjusting expectations as conditions improved. In this slide here, you can see the history of Measure T, which is in the blue bars, and then the forecast for Measure U, which is in orange. This is a forecast. This is not the budget, and I'll explain the difference between the two in a couple of slides here. But this just shows you that, for the most part, Measure T and Measure U revenues, they started off around $19 million. There was a dip during the COVID year. Then there was a huge shot up into the $24 million mark in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. And we kind of flatlined around $25 million, just slightly above $25 million for the next 3 years thereafter. Fiscal year 26, the first orange bar that you see there on the left of the 3 orange bars still shows that revenues should be coming in around $25.3 million this year, which is slightly ahead of last year, which was just over $25 million. And then we'll pretty much rise around 1% per year for the next couple of years. Since the budget is a spending authority that the board approves, staff escalates Measure U revenues approximately 25% higher than forecasted. If revenues come in higher, they will pass through quickly to the jurisdictions as expenditures without additional approvals or delays from the accounting system. Because the budget is a spending authority, if revenues come in higher, we pass through most of those revenues to the jurisdictions. The spending authority, if it was lower, could stall that distribution to the jurisdictions. And our intent is to submit those disbursements on a quarterly basis as quickly as possible to the jurisdictions for their projects and their programs that they have under Measure T and Measure U, which is the reason why our budgets are always about 25 to 30% higher than what you would expect. If you go to the next slide here, I'll just give you an example. So this is the County of Napa's. It's their budget for their program. As you can see here, where the fiscal year 27 and 28, the budget is, and I can't see it, but you see the budget line item there for total expenses, and down below you see the forecast line. So the total expenses is the budget line. That's what we budget in terms of ensuring that revenues flow through easily through the jurisdictions. The forecast line should be used for planning purposes. That's where we expect to land for those two outer years for 27 and 28. This provides the public works and the finance departments with planning tools that they can plan for incoming revenues so they don't overcommit to certain projects if those revenues don't come in. But if they do come in, then that's just an extra bonus that, hey, our revenues are coming in slightly higher than what we forecasted. These forecasts are available to the jurisdiction's public works department, their finance team. And all they have to do is request these forecasts at any given time. We do have that information available to them. And we do talk to the ITAC on a regular basis of what our forecast is and if those forecasts have changed in future periods. If you go to the next slide here, we'll go through each one of these. It's in your packet. These are each jurisdiction's what the expected budget is, as well as what their forecast is. The budget is up above and the forecast is down below. So this is for the city of Napa. If you go to the next slide, we have Yountville. And with Measure U, the formula has changed. You can see up above in terms of Yountville, for example, Yountville's Measure T percentage was 2.7%, I believe. And now with Measure U, that has changed to 3.4%. So you will see a before and after, Measure T percentage versus a Measure U percentage. If you go to the next slide, you can see St. Helena's right here, what their budget is and what their new percentage calculation is based on the Measure U expenditure plan. And you can see their budget in the forecast. And of course, the crown of Napa County, we have Calistoga here. And you can see what their budget is versus what their forecast is. And then next slide, please. And then there is the NVTA admin. Previously, ITAC had its own, the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee had its own budget, had its own department. With Measure U, that got folded into the NVTA admin. And for the NVTA admin, we have stipends, expenditures for the ITAC members. And then we'll also have the 2% admin. And then we also have a set aside for highway planning and projects. And that's why you see the dramatic increase from Measure T to Measure U in terms of expenditures and the budget for the NVTA admin department. And then I think that's the last slide for this. The budget is pretty straightforward. Money comes in, money goes out. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room other than, just what internal staff's estimates and their forecasts and the budgets are for the tax agency. So just in conclusion and to recap, staff is asking the board to formally adopt the tax agency's 2-year biennial budget of $29,709,000 for fiscal year 27 and $30,359,000 for fiscal year 28 through the resolution 2601TA. And with that concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Board, are there any questions about this budget presentation? Oh, okay. Director Alessio.
Thank you for the presentation. In the next couple of years, if any of the jurisdictions want to advance funds as the Measure U bond allows for, does that have to be approved by this budget, or can it be directly activated by the jurisdiction? And do we have a breakdown of what that looks like per jurisdiction?
So we're currently developing a working group, and we're also developing plans and asking jurisdictions if they were to bond, what does that look like? They are providing us with some lists. I think the county has provided us with a list, and so has Calistoga. We are asking the other jurisdictions if they have an interest. That will culminate into a working group that we're going to convene in June. And from there, we'll start the process of issuing the first bond, the first of the bonds. In that process, those lists from those jurisdictions will come before this board for formal adoption, as well as, at their city councils or the board of supervisors as well. So there is a process to have this board as well as the jurisdictions informed what the bonding process looks like, where we are at in the process, and what the proposed adoption of projects will be for the first bond issuance for us. That's estimated, the actual issuance is estimated to be in early 2028. That schedule is still being developed, but with the working group, we'll have some conversations and discussions on what the process looks like, what are the steps to get us there, and when is the estimated time to present in front of the tax agency on what that list of projects will be for those bonds.
Thank you very much.
All right. Are there any other questions from the board before we open the public hearing? All right, then I'll open the public hearing. And if anybody from the public, either here or online, wish to make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand or come on up to the other podium. No one wants to comment. All right, then I will close the public hearing. Any comments before we consider resolution number 2601TA? Then if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2601TA.
So moved.
Williams and Washington. All those in favor, start a roll call.
Scott Sedgley. Bernie Narvaez. Liz Alessio.
Yes. Yes.
Amber Manfree.
Yeah.
Mark Joseph. Pierre Washington. Pam Reeves.
Yeah.
Eric Knight.
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Donald Williams.
Yes.
Kevin Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Now we move to consent. We have one consent item, the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent item. All right, Washington moves,
Second.
Knight seconds. May we have a roll call, please?
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Bernie Narvaez,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Amber Manfree, Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Pierre Washington, Pam Reeves, Eric Knight,
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Regular agenda items, we don't have any future agenda items. Anybody want to bring up a topic for the taxing authority in the future? All right, then I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 1:19. And I'll do this. And then immediately call to order the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors meeting also at 1:19. Do we need to make any adjustments to the roll call?
Roll call is confirmed at the preceding NVTA-TA meeting with the addition of Devereaux Smith, our PCC representative, and we do have one board member attending remotely, Director Alessio, and one absence from Director Michelle Deasy. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And next, adoption of the agenda. Any revisions? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. All right, Narvaez and Washington. A roll call, please.
Scott Sedgley, Bernie Narvaez,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Amber Manfree, Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Pierre Washington,
Yes.
Pam Reeves, Eric Knight, Paul Doring.
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, public comments. Anyone from the public or online or in person who wishes to make any comments on any item not part of this agenda? And we have someone. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Ashley Tencher. I'm a member of the NVTA-CAC committee. And I want to thank the board very much for approving funds to improve the CAD AVL system a few months ago. It's going to improve reliability for riders in a tremendous way. Almost every piece of communication cascades from that system, whether it be the TV screens that you see out here or the ability for travelers to get texts if they get on the bus at the same stop every day, or if you use any of the number of features of Where's My Bus, either the interactive map that NVTA has or transit app, they all run from this base information. So I'm so proud of NVTA for pursuing this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know it's been an issue, so hopefully our reliability and accuracy will continue to increase. Any,
Chair, we do have public comment from Carlota Senado
okay.
for item 8.2. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, then, no other public comment? Then I will move to chairperson and other reports. I don't have anything to report. So any board members? Anything to report? We're okay. We're on to MTC then.
Okay. MTC Programming and Allocations Committee approved 11.6 million for the State Route 37 Tole Creek Bridge project to complete the funding plan on the package at our most recent meeting last week. The Tole Creek Bridge replacement is the first phase of the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project for Highway 37. The project will widen and extend the bridge. This will ease traffic by providing a longer set of lanes for merging. And I was stuck in that backup just last week, so that's going to be an improvement for a lot of commuters. And it will also improve connections for wildlife species like fish and terrestrial marsh animals underneath the bridge passing. Right now, it's super narrow with no terrestrial passage and a really constrained passage for water and tides. And this will widen it substantially and really rehabilitate the areas upstream for ecological function. Also, the state has updated the Cal Enviro Screen 5.0 tool, which is used to identify disadvantaged communities based on cumulative environmental and population burdens. We're concerned that the new rules will be less favorable to the San Francisco Bay Area generally. MTC is working on a letter to advocate for a definition of disadvantaged communities that better reflects the full range of disadvantaged communities in our region. MTC's BAFA Housing Portal received a Eureka Excellence Award from the California Association of Council of Governments at the organizational Regional Leadership Forum in Long Beach last month, which I believe Belia Ramos attended on our behalf. Is that right? Yes. And this award recognizes regional programs that demonstrate the type of creative leadership and thinking needed to solve tough regional challenges. The Doorway Housing Portal was launched in 2023 and it's the first multi-jurisdictional online affordable housing portal that serves as a one-stop shop for searching and applying for affordable housing. It really does make things easier. If you have never checked it out, I definitely recommend Googling the Doorway Housing Portal for the Bay Area and recommending it to anyone who's looking for housing, especially affordable housing. MTC's Regional Network Management Council approved the transit wayfinding design guidelines to help Bay Area transit agencies establish a uniform look for signs and maps, which will help people with wayfinding at regional transit hubs and especially those that connect multiple systems. NVTA will be incorporating some of the signage at the Redwood Park and Ride when it updates the transit signage at that hub. Yay. Lastly, second to lastly, applications are open for the MTC Norman Mineta High School Academy, a paid summer program designed to introduce young people to careers in the public sector and regional leadership. The 4-week academy offers students a chance to explore how decisions about transportation, housing, and the environment shape everyday life in the Bay Area. Applications must be submitted by Monday, April 27th. Applications can be found on the MTC website. So if you know any young folks interested in this line of work, send them there. And lastly, I had the pleasure of lobbying in Sacramento on Monday with the Mega Region Working Group, which is a subsidiary of MTC for Senator Cabalden's bill, which I imagine we'll be discussing in the meetings ahead. And generally just letting them know that we have a regional, mega regional, this is San Joaquin, San Francisco Bay Area, and the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. So big, huge region that aligns on certain goals. Thanks a lot. That's it.
All right, well, thank you very much. Next, ABAG.
Thank you, Chair. A quick update on ABAG. The focus continues to be on aligning transportation investments with housing growth through the Plan Bay Area 2050, which directs support to NVTA's long-range planning and funding for competitiveness. ABAG is also emphasizing federal and state grant readiness, climate resilience for transportation infrastructure, and equity and transit access, all these areas that would create opportunities for the NVTA projects and services. ABAG also is enhancing its regional data and modeling that took the support of service planning and the grant applications. And it remains to be an important forum for us to participate in because it's elevating the North Bay and the Napa County transit needs and at a regional level. And they did have their elections. Belia Ramos actually did an amazing job this last year. She's moving on, and I can't recall the last name of the new person, so I need to look that back up. But we do have a new president. I'll have that name on our next meeting.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Now to the executive director's report.
Chair, I have one announcement.
Go ahead.
In Calistoga last weekend, we dedicated a bicycle parking station in the center of town. We've converted a former parklet, which was not much used, and it has become a station for parking bicycles near the top of the Vine Trail. And so there was a collaborative effort across Calistoga, civic clubs, Rotary, for example, the Art Commission in town, and the local transportation committee, as well as the city council. A lot of people were involved in decorating the bike parking station and informally dedicating it last weekend. So when cyclists are using the Vine Trail and arrive in the center of Calistoga, they don't have to park on they don't have to chain their bikes at all in Calistoga because there's not a lot of problem up there.
Oh,
but if they want to, rather than chaining to a pole, they can go to the bike parking station and feel that their biking is secure. Just an announcement there to encourage cycling up valley.
Excellent. Thank you for the report. And now we'll switch to the executive director.
Yes, good afternoon. Before you, staff has passed out the Bottle Rock schedule. So just to remind the board, we do provide free Bottle Rock service all weekend long. We have extended hours, so please let your family and friends know if you would like more Bottle Rock schedules. Please reach out to us and transit staff and we can provide them. The free transit is courtesy of Visit Napa Valley and Bottle Rock that helps subsidize free fares for that weekend. We do not have a Caltrans report, but on May 11th, there will be a full closure. This is really for the Up Valley folks. There'll be a full closure of State Route 29 on May 11th in the evening at Rutherford at the culvert replacement from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We've sent this information to all the public works staff of each of the jurisdictions, but just to give that announcement. Last Thursday, NVTA hosted the Valley Oak High School students on a field trip at the bus maintenance facility and provided a tour and hands-on experience. The maintenance manager, David, as well as transit planners provided their career stories and career path information. It was a very informative and positive experience. So thank you to TransDev staff as well as the NVTA transit team for making that happen. We are kicking off the Napa Valley Vision Zero data update and progress report. So this plan was completed by this agency in 2023. And so we will be updating benchmarking where our statistics are on collisions and fatalities, and we'll be bringing that back to the board at a later time. NVTA will be participating in the Vine Trail Month of Movement starting on May 1st. So if any board members would like to join the Notorious Valley Transportation Animals team and walk, bike, or roll in the month of May, please let us know. And our former executive director has joined our team and has already launched her campaign to, I think she rides 400 and something miles in the month. I will not do 400 miles, but I have committed to 147 miles. NVTA will be releasing a unified call for projects next month at the May NVTA board meeting. This unified call for projects will be a compilation of the OBAG 4 program, which comes down through MTC, TFCA bikeways, CARE, and LPP formula funds. The call for projects is estimated at about $11 million. We've been working with your project teams, your staff, and so we encourage all jurisdictions to submit projects that are eligible. NVTA will be working the Earth Day booth. So on this Saturday, April 18th, we will have our art bus on display at Earth Day, and we will have staff working a booth throughout the day. So please come by and say hello and grab some swag. And lastly, please save the date for our NVTA board retreat, which will be September 16th. So we're targeting our September 16th board meeting for a strategic plan retreat. The board secretary will send out more information, but I just wanted to get it on your radar. It will probably be an all-day event, so starting in the morning and going into the afternoon. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Right. On the bike and ride or bike, walk, and everything else event, is that the same program as the Amigos or?
No, this is just a campaign that the Vine Trail puts on annually for raising funds for the Vine Trail. And NVTA staff voluntarily, we create our own team. I think Director Eisenberg has been part of our team in the past where he's joined our team, and there's individuals here that pledge a certain amount of miles that they're either going to walk or bike, and we all donate or get donations towards the Vine Trail. So it's completely optional, but just that we have a team, and if you're wanting to join it, you're welcome to.
Okay, that sounds exciting.
I haven't yet joined the team, but I've already gotten several pledges, and I'm supposedly going to get a T-shirt and a zip down thing for the number of pledges. So progress.
All right. Now, I may give some thought about how many miles I can walk. And I'm assuming you can just say I have so many steps on my pedometer and that translates. All right, I could do this. Okay, well, that's exciting. But we don't have a Caltrans report. So that means we are right into public hearings. And our first one is budget related, first reading of the NVTA's biennial budget. So Tony, you're back.
I am. All right. Good afternoon again. So for this public hearing, staff is presenting as a first reading, not an adoption at this point, the fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28 biennial budget for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. The biennial budget establishes the authority's financial plan and spending authority for transportation programs, public transit services, and capital investments over the next 2 fiscal years beginning July 1st, 2026. Next slide, please. So just for a little bit of background, staff begins a comprehensive biennial budget process starting in January, receiving data and various budget inputs from project managers at the agency. An ad hoc budget meeting was convened in March, which included Chair Joseph, Vice Chair Doring, and Director Narvaez to discuss the preliminary budget inputs, ask questions on different budget drivers, and offer comments and remarks for refining the budget. Those inputs have culminated into what's being presented today, which is the first reading of the agency's comprehensive budget. Staff will continue to receive comments and feedback on the budget for consideration before the formal adoption, which is expected to occur at the May 20th Board of Directors meeting next month. So it just gives you a little bit of a schedule of where we're at. So January through May, we will continue to receive budget inputs. We had our ad hoc budget meeting on March 9th. We have our public hearing today. And then we'll continue on receiving comments and for considering incorporations of any changes to the budget, biennial budgets for adoption at the May 20th meeting. Next slide, please. So this slide focuses on the myriad of funding sources that could potentially flow to NVTA. Not always, but these tend to be the reoccurring grants that we receive. I wanted to point out one of the main differences between NVTA's revenue sources and a municipality, such as a city or the county, is that NVTA is primarily funded by specific revenue sources, such as transportation sales taxes, state transit assistance funds, federal grants, local subsidies, and a small portion comes from fare box revenues. However, most of these revenues received are on a reimbursement basis, which and the payback for those reimbursements tend to be very inconsistent depending on the grant source. Sometimes we get paid back within 30 days of a reimbursement request. Sometimes it could be up to 6 months. It's simply just whatever the grant terms are for that specific grant source that we're trying to recover some of our costs from. Also, as you can see here, I have a section for transportation. I have a section for transit. Typically, we can't commingle these two different types of grants and cross-reference them for any specific type of project. Transportation grant funds can only be used for transportation purposes. Transit grant funds can only be used for transit purposes. Commingling or using one type of grant for a different purpose is a big no-no and could get us hit with several findings and a quick audit review process, which we've never had because we keep our books very clean. The only exception to this is Transportation Development Act, the core sense sales tax. Those grant funds are given to us on an advancement basis. And that's for cash flow purposes because our other grants tend to be unstable and the payback for those grants tend to be very inconsistent. Whatever excess Transportation Development Act funds we receive that we don't use for the year, we give it back to the trust account for a future allocation. And you've seen that when we accept the audited financial statements, there's always a return of, we call it local transportation fund, but it's really a return of excess TDA funds. All right, next slide, please. So for fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28 biennial budget and 2-year outlook, it supports the adopted goals of the Countywide Transportation Program 2050 by directing funding towards equitable transportation access, improved safety, climate responsive investments, and stewardship of public resources. budget allocations across transit operations, capital improvements, and regional planning programs advance these strategic objectives. Page 4 of the memo in the packet provides a table linking the CTP goals to the various budget activities. So this shows that the CTP goals and how we budget are really a collaborative effort, and the table provides those linkages and how the CTP goals affect the different types of budget areas. All right, next slide, please. So now let's get into the budget. This slide provides a highly condensed view of NVTA's total biennial budget, itemized by various fund types that the agency manages. As you can see in the slide, for fiscal year 27, the budget is $57,961,600, and for fiscal year 28, it's $48,218,300, for a total two-year budget of $106,179,900. We're going to take a deeper dive into each of these funds in a moment, but I wanted to point out that for the first 2 years of the budget, it's nearly 10. For the first year of the budget, you see it's about $10 million more than the second year. So this is intentional. So for our specific grant projects and programs and our capital investments, what we do is what we call front loading. We front load those projects in the first year of the 2-year budget cycle. And the reason for that is so we can optimize the spending authority. Projects get delayed, they get accelerated, they tend to move or shift around. And by having front loading in the first year of the 2-year cycle allows us to make quick changes if those grants or those projects, there's a change in schedule for that. I also wanted to point out to you that you also see two additional years. You see a 2-year proposed budget, and then you see a 2-year financial outlook. Actually, NVTA has a 10-year internal forecast for the agency itself that we track internally that we can use to kind of identify future potential challenges or maybe choke points where we have to start planning for them early on. So these internal forecasts, this 10-year forecast, provides the agency with a kind of a glimpse in the future, a very broad glimpse on where we can see some unevenness in economic activity, maybe in operations or in grant funding challenges. And so we do have long-term financial forecasts. What's being presented to you today is the 2-year budget, and we will show you what the 2-year outlook after the budget appears to be. You're only going to be, when adopting the budget, you're only going to be adopting the 2-year budget. You're not going to be adopting a 4-year plan. But I just wanted to show you we do have a 4-year plan that's presented to the board. And also, too, just to note, we get rated by credit agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and they also require a long-term 10-year forecast. And so that's one of the reasons why we maintain those long-term plans. All right, next slide, please. So this is a very consolidated high-level view of the agency's budget in a pie chart, because looking at a bunch of numbers, it's hard to put into any context what those numbers mean. But seeing where the money comes from and where the expenses are going in a pie chart format kind of gives you an idea. Oh, these are the tranches of funds that we receive, and this is where the money gets distributed on a biennial basis. So as you can see from here, sources of funds, we have Transportation Development Act, state and local grants, and federal grants all occupy nearly a third of the pie. And the rest of the pie comes from grant funds, a little bit from interest earnings, and a very small amount from farebox. These percentages will shift as we look at the individual funds, but on an overall basis, this is where our sources of funds come from. And on the expenditure side, about a third goes to public transit for the purchase transportation contract. A huge share goes towards grant-funded projects and programs. And then we have a portion that goes to capital investments. And then we round out with administrative expenses, personnel costs, and depreciation, which is a non-cash charge, but it's an accounting treatment and it's part of our budgeting process as well. All right, next slide, please. So this is the Congestion Management Agency. We also call it the Planning Fund. We also call it the General Fund. At least our accountants call it the General Fund. So there's multiple names for the same fund. This slide reflects the agency's operations, and the expenses are provided in three broad categories. In the attachments, it's itemized line by line, what those expenditures are. But for the presentation purposes, it's in three broad categories. It's in salaries and employee benefits. The largest portion of agency expenditures is for grant-funded projects and programs. And a list of what those grant-funded programs are, they're in your attachment. And to round out the rest of the agency's expenditures is for administrative and operations. The two-year budget for the CMA is going to be $38,613,700. Next slide, please. This is, again, to put it in context in an illustrative format, this is where the sources of funds come from, and this is where the expenditures goes towards. A majority of the funding for these special grants, these grant-funded projects and programs come from dedicated grants that we received or have at least identified and will get secured before we make any kind of eligible expenses towards those projects. We get a part from Transportation Development Act contributes to part of our operations, usually as a local match for many of these programs. We also get funding from the state and from federal and local and regional resources. On the expense side, professional services, those grant-funded projects and programs, takes a lion's share of the operating costs at about $27 million for the next 2 years. We have a portion for personnel costs, and the rest comes from agency administration. And that's really our accounting, our IT systems, all the infrastructure that it takes to run the agency itself. All right, next slide, please. Again, we have a list of the projects that we intend on delivering for the next 2 years, as long as the funding is secured. But these are really the top project costs. We have, as you guys know, State Route 29, State Route 12, Airport Boulevard improvements we're working on. We're looking at a $10 million budget for the next couple of years. And most of that is, if not all, is grant funded. Again, with State Route 29, American Canyon Corridor improvements, South Valley, another $10 million. We're looking to deliver that project. We're not forgetting people up Valley. We have the State Route 29, State Route 29 Napa Forward pegged at about $3.5 million. We have some capital project coordination, $600,000. This is over 2 years, mind you. It's not over a single year. It's over the next 2 years. And then we have the next biggest line item is the community-based transportation plan, implementing those projects under that. Again, with dedicated grant source funding. And then all the other projects round out the total expense line of $27.2 million for the CMA.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
On these grant-funded projects, just to be clear, the 10 million doesn't get you a new and improved 1229 corridor. It's just so.
It gets you to construction.
Right. So it's
Mhm.
just for anybody paying attention, don't think that in 2 years, these two projects will be complete and we're only out 20 million instead of a lot more. So.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, this will get you to construction. And then we will seek grant funds for the construction portion of those projects. But this will give us to a shovel-ready point to get us to that, to get us to seeking grant, state and federal grants for those construction projects. All right, next slide, please. Okay, we will switch on over to the Public Transit Fund, Vine Transit. And we're looking at a budget at about $66,318,200 over the next 2 years for both operations and transit capital equipment acquisitions. Nearly all the costs to deliver public transit are fixed, mainly for purchase transportation contract that we have with Transit Services, fuel and maintenance of the agency's transit assets and facilities, and administrative costs to run, which will run about $45,862,700. Public transit We also have a capital component, which is going to be about 20,455,000. We'll talk about that in a moment. And there's a portion for depreciation as well. Next slide, please. Another illustrative pie chart on where the fund sources come from versus how those funds are distributed. About 40% comes from Transportation Development Act. That's our main source of funding for public transit. We do get contributions from the Federal Transit Administration, the federal government, to deliver public transit services and ADA transit services. And the rest of the money comes from the state, with a small portion coming from Farebox. On the expense side, as I mentioned, it's mainly the costs are fixed. It's mainly public transit, and fuel occupies about 55% of the total costs of delivering transit services. We have about 35% for capital investments. We'll talk about what those capital investments will look like in a bit. And agency administration and maintenance of those assets round out the rest of the expenditures. Without the depreciation component, the total 2-year plan to deliver public transit is $58 million, $418,000. Once you add in the depreciation component, that's an accounting charge. It's not a direct expense, but it is part of our financials. Then it does go up to about $66 million. Next slide, please. All right, this is a photo of a rundown of our transit capital investments for the next 2 years. It's also in your attachment, but most of the costs will be for rolling stock. And rolling stock is just a fancy term of saying buses. We have about 6 hybrid buses that are going to be delivered. We also have 2 battery electric buses that are set to be delivered in the next couple of years. And then we also have some paratransit vehicles. All these have been, majority is grant funded. There is a portion that is a contribution from the agency to complete those purchases. We also have a bus shelter replacement program that is going to be dependent on any congressionally directed spending that we may receive from the federal government. So we're waiting to hear back on that. And then also just recently, as we also have heard, we just are about to implement a new CAT AVL system. So there is still a portion of costs, not only in this current year, but also in next fiscal year, that we have to address and pay for as well. We have our typical facilities upgrades and our engine replacements, and that pretty much, and some onesie, twosie, equipment purchases, and that rounds up the capital program for the next 2 years, about $20.5 million. And then down below, you can kind of see the financing plan and where most of those grant funds are going to come from. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide, I believe, just to round out. We do have 2 other funds that we manage. Debt service. Debt service is the cost of the federal loan that we have with the Build America Bureau, the U.S. Department of Transportation. We are currently paying debt services about $184,000 a year. That is for interest-only loan that we have for the bus maintenance facility. The loan itself is about almost $19 million, but for the first 10 years of the loan, it's an interest-only payment, and that is only about $184,000. It's a 1% federal loan that was awarded to us to construct the bus maintenance facility. So it's a pretty good deal, but we do have a debt service fund. And then rounding out, the remaining fund is Transportation Fund for Clean Air. This is one of our passive funds that we manage. It's a pass-through. Funding comes in, funding goes out. We have only a handful of transactions per year, but it is part of the agency's operations. It is part of the agency budget, and that's why we include it in this as well. I think that is the last slide. I will say there are several attachments in your packet. We can provide bigger copies for bigger font. It tends to be very small, but it is pretty thorough. It's very detailed. And as I mentioned, through the ad hoc budgetary committee, we have gone through the drivers and had the opportunity to ask for any questions. So I think it was thoroughly vetted at that time. And that concludes my report. I can answer any questions you may have.
All right, well, thank you very much. So first up, any comments from the board before we open the public hearing?
I just had a question about how you estimate fuel costs in the future, given the fact that we're going to be going to more hybrids, more electric vehicles. How is it that a finance person kind of delves into that and figures out, well, what will those fuel costs be?
So we
over
do
the
have a
next
little,
5 years or 6
we
years?
just started fueling up the new Gillig battery electric hybrid, battery electric buses. So we do know what the kilowatt hour cost is, kilowatt hours are. We know it's still with PG&E, so there's going to be some cost escalations. I take a look at what the estimated kilowatt hours of usage will be for the next couple of years. We're not drastically changing how we operate our transit services. There might be some potential for expansion, but so I tend to look at what our history was for the diesel and gas vehicles, trying to figure out what the estimated cost for fuel that is, and then trying to estimate what the costs of electricity as a fuel will be for the fully electric fleet that we have and we can potentially have in the future. So and from what I can tell you, fuel costs are still going up. They're not really going down.
I noticed in the 2026 legal budget that it's significantly higher for, well, it's significantly higher. It's like $350,000. Is that
For
legal budget?
Mhm.
Is that is there something special there other than maybe potential litigation? Why that would be higher than, I don't have the line item. Maybe I do. 52140, it's under services and
Yeah.
supplies.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. It's for bond counsel for
Okay, that's what I was assuming.
mhm.
All right.
Yeah, so the NVTA, the tax agency actually doesn't contract with bond counsel or any other counsel. Actually, the NVTA contracts with that. So the contract resides with NVTA, the agency, and then we take those and we charge it out to the tax agency as part of the 1%, portion of agency expenses. So that's why you kind of see a bump up for NVTA, but nothing yet. Well, and then on the TA side, you see the 2%, which incorporates those costs. So there are going to be some additional legal expenses in the future for the TA once we get to that point.
Thank you.
All right. Director Williams and then Director Alessio.
Thank you for the report. It shows that the fare box contributes about 4% or so of the revenue in the transit agency. And is that 4% consistent with recent years' performance here at NVTA? And how does that compare with other similar agencies as far as the percentage of revenue that comes from the fare box?
So the 4% is blended for all our transit services. You have to kind of look at it more individually per transit line. So for the Vine, the fare box is running around 6% total. And that's been pretty consistent over the last few years since COVID has occurred. For the smaller, for American Canyon, the fare box ratio is about 15%. And for the Up Valley, it's 10%. And those have been consistent just because the jurisdictions do contribute to the fare box of those like the Yountville B, Calistoga shuttle, and the St. Helena shuttle. So those have all been consistent. So, but it is kind of low because, as you know, we're still struggling on getting back some of our passengers, and we're trying different solutions to get back some of those passengers and to increase our passengers for the next few years.
So a few years ago, the percentage would have been a few points higher,
Would have been higher. It was higher.
6 or 7%.
It was probably closer around 10%.
And then as far as comparing with other, similar transit agencies, is that more or less comparable or
It's
much
hard to
different?
compare because each transit agency has a different profile on how they generate their fare boxes. It's hard to, even with Solano, just, down the street, they have a different fare box ratio. They have a different demographic of riders. And so trying to compare with another agency is it's comparing apples to oranges rather than
Okay,
apples to
I get
apples.
it.
So
Thank you.
All right, then Director Alessio, online.
Tony, thank you for all the work and keeping it as simple as possible for us while still covering everything. Great job. Question for you. Does this, a couple questions. Does this account for the pilot program if it was approved to move forward, the mobility manager? I didn't see anything there under the programming for mobility manager. I know right now it's in pilot form, but is that something that can, if it's not in there already, I'm missing it. Is that something that can be added later?
we just. I think it does include it because I don't think we're going to hire a mobility manager. We're going to include it as part of the tasks of one of our staff members right now, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, right?
So we're covering the mobility management component under our current budget now, and
Okay.
then we were to come back in September, October timeframe and provide a kind of overview of what we've been tracking, which is Dexter Cypress, one of our transit planners, has been acting as the mobility manager and working with the county as that resource. And so he is tracking, the mobility management calls that he gets, what sort of service requests are coming in, and then we were going to provide that information. He's also tracking how much time he's spending on that specific program, and then we were going to bring it back. Right now, it's covered in our budget, but if for some reason we wanted to make a budget amendment or something in the future, we could do that if we were going to put more resources into that program.
So it's folded into an existing FTO and it does not need to be itemized as a program, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
For this pilot, yes.
For this pilot. Okay, I just don't want us to forget that and look forward to hearing some information in terms of outreach, what we're doing to promote it and letting people know it exists. Is there any in passive my recollection, I could be wrong, there was some involvement or some support NVT provided for safe routes to schools? Is that correct? And are we going to be doing that at all in the future?
Yes, so we have one budget line item that's called Safe Routes to Schools, Safe Routes to Transit, and I do not recall how much exactly is in there. I think it's about $200,000, and that is
Okay.
for mostly capital improvements along our transit system, or especially transit that's near schools. For instance, we used some of that funding to upgrade bus stops on Lincoln Avenue, or we're going to be upgrading a bus stop on Lincoln Avenue right next to Napa High School, which is a really popular bus route for Napa High School students and for us. And so the city is doing a road project and we're partnering with them and updating a bus stop. Or we added an additional bus stop up in Calistoga. So that's the kind of line item budget item that we use for that. I think you're also talking about the Safe Routes to School programmatic
Yes.
outreach and education, which
Yes.
in the past, this board has approved a budget for that under what is going out next month, which is the call for projects. So that could be something that the board approves again in the future, but it was a partnership that we did with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, but it
Yes.
was approved by this board. So it was pass-through funding, really. It wasn't
Mhm.
NVTA staff driven, if that makes sense.
Correct. Correct. But it was very important for this program to exist, for it to be passed through this agency. So I just want to make sure that, we remember that if that's something we're going to do. So thank you for those answers.
Right, thank you. Any other comments from the board before we open the public hearing? Then let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience here or anyone online who would like to comment on our proposed two-year budget? Budget stuff is exciting, so you're missing out. All right, well then I will close the public hearing. And for now, this is just informational and we'll be back next month for formal action. Okay, then that gets us to our second public hearing, 8.2, Napa County-wide Active Transportation Plan Adoption. Patrick Band. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. Patrick Band, Senior Planner with NVTA, joined by Emily Shandy from GHD, our lead consultant on this project. We'll get the slide presentation going. Next slide. So we have two items under 8.2. One is the public hearing to adopt the Napa Countywide Active Transportation Plan, inclusive of minor administrative edits that we may identify. Inevitably, there are little typos or corrections that we catch after adoption. We want to make sure that we have the flexibility to make those changes. And second is the CEQA exemption. Next slide, please. So we presented to this board 2 months ago with the draft countywide active transportation plan. That draft was the culmination of about 18 months of diligent work by NVTA staff, GHD, their contract or project team, and local jurisdiction staff, as well as feedback from members of the public. As I shared a couple of months ago, we had over 2,000 unique interactions with members of the public throughout the plan development process. Over the last 2 months, we've had an additional opportunity for individuals, public agencies, stakeholders to review the draft plan, provide additional comments. We did receive a handful of comments from the county, the City of American Canyon, the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, Save the Bay, and a couple of individual community members. Most of those comments were very minor. There were some technical corrections that we identified. There were a handful of facility recommendations that were adjusted or modified, whether it's the extent of the pedestrian or bicycle improvement, or we had little typos and things like that, or a change in the classification type to more appropriately fit either the local context or what the local jurisdiction's intentions or plans were for that corridor moving forward. And then some additional comments regarding how best local jurisdictions can support implementation of the plan or individual projects moving forward. So some very strong comments that we received over the last couple of months that are now incorporated into the final draft that is before you today. Next slide, please. So kind of at a glance, because I don't want to belabor the point, we've already talked about this a couple of times and you have the draft plan in front of you. The existing bicycle and pedestrian network throughout Napa County is 173 miles of bicycle facilities, and that includes Class 1 shared use pathways like the Vine Trail. It also includes on-street facilities like Class 2 bike lanes along the shoulder of streets, and shared facilities where bicyclists are identified and designated through signage or striping as sharing the roadway with vehicles. The PED mileage at 570 kind of double counts that Class 1 shared use pathway corridor mileage, because again, pedestrians and bicyclists can use those facilities as well as sidewalks throughout our communities. The draft plan in front of you proposes additional 436 miles of bike facilities and 84 miles of priority pedestrian gap closures in future years. There are a little over 400 unique bicycle projects in the plan and over 400 identified pedestrian gap closures that were identified through the process of putting this plan together. We've also, because that's a large number of both miles and projects, we identified with our consultant team 52 near-term projects to be prioritized through the local jurisdiction process, as well as 52 county-wide policies that will support the goals and objectives identified in the plan. Next slide. So our next steps following adoption today would be local agency adoption. We've been working closely with each of our local jurisdictions in the county, the cities and the town to move towards local adoption of the plan. As I reminded you a couple of months ago, this plan has an individual chapter for each jurisdiction. So for whether it's the town of Yountville or City of American Canyon, you will have a chapter that your local council or board can adopt, incorporate, and implement in years to come. We also then will get going on funding and implementation. As I said, we've got a lot of miles of bicycle and pedestrian improvements to make in the coming years. So we'll begin identifying funding, working with jurisdictions, including state agencies like Caltrans on implementation, and advancing the projects that are in our countywide active transportation plan into our local jurisdiction CIP project lists. And then on an annual basis, because again, this isn't a plan that just sits on a shelf, but we want to make sure it continues to be active and updated kind of perpetually, that we'll do annual updates and evaluation, including updating all of our GIS, our maps for the plan, so that we have an accurate perception of what has been built, what is there left to do, and how we made progress both on the physical infrastructure as well as some of the programs and policies in the plan, and then evaluate overall progress towards goals and objectives. Next slide. I think that's it that we had, but we're always happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the report. Just to be clear, this is a plan that identifies all the projects we would love to be able to accomplish, not necessarily everything that we've secured a funding for. So it's aspirational versus something else.
That is correct. And I would characterize this actually as both aspirational and very real world. Again, we've identified those 50+ projects that can be implemented in the near term. And jurisdictions will then have a chance to modify those lists and look at what can we do in the near term to advance safety projects, to advance connectivity, with an equity lens for communities or neighborhoods that may have been underserved by active transportation infrastructure programs in the past.
Okay, and then going to those near-term projects, can you explain a little bit of the criteria? Is it safety? Is it, what's, there, some of the projects, looking at American Canyon, some of the projects were identified as near term. And I'm thinking, well, that's probably because it's pretty inexpensive to just stripe it, but it may not give us that much bang for our buck. So what's the criteria involved?
Yeah, there were 5 criteria that every project in the plan was scored on. Safety was one of those, equity was one of those, connectivity to existing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and key destinations and some other things. But we also recognize that a strictly objective process like that misses some things in the real world. So once we did that initial screening, we looked at the highest scoring projects in each jurisdiction and completed kind of a manual review of that shortlist and said, does this make sense? If we were to look at this as the built out network 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is this a logical network outside of the rest of those recommendations? And made some substitutions at that point based on our team's judgment, based on input from the individual jurisdictions on things that were already in their plans and priorities, their upcoming repaving projects already in their CIPs, to sort of align with local priorities, make sure that we're prioritizing a short list of projects that made logical sense. Independent utility, if that's a term you're familiar with, if only that short list gets implemented, making sure that that's a logical network. So it was a combination of a criteria-based evaluation and then that more subjective review.
Okay. And then if the project's in the plan, but maybe not a near term, each jurisdiction arguably could say, well, we disagree and we'll come up with the funding to make it happen.
Absolutely. And the near-term prioritization that we went through that Emily just described was really the start of that process.
Right.
And we certainly envision this to be something that is revisited on a regular basis as councils set their budgets and priorities for the year. Priorities are going to shift. And so just because a project is or is not listed in the countywide plan as a near-term priority doesn't mean an opportunistic, chance may come up where you have new funding or there's a neighborhood that is particularly vocal and interested in seeing a priority move forward. So all of those opportunities still exist.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions. Does the board have any questions before we? And here we're holding a public hearing. So we are taking formal action tonight to approve the CEQA document and adopt the plan, or just?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So that's the objective. If no public, Amber.
I'll do one. So I want to say that I'm happy to see in the staff letter that there's a recommendation for Silverado Trail to be designated as a class 2 from Deer Park down to Napa city limits. Great. And I guess I'm just to form it as a question and not just support is how does that kind of dovetail with the work Napa County's already been doing on adding rumble strips to the road? And there we have had a little bit of friction over that with some neighbors and noise. I'm sure you're aware. I think we've addressed it. I haven't heard anything further since the area with problems was reconfigured. But I've heard some comments that maybe adjusting the rumble strips in relation to their distance from the line might help that. So anyways, anything on that subject, happy to hear it.
Yeah, and so that comment was received by from the Bicycle Coalition to upgrade Silverado Trail from Deer Park South to Trancas. And so that recommendation is now in the plan, going from an existing class 2 to a buffered class 2. So again, adding those buffers and potentially those rumble strips that the county had initiated on a pilot project approach. You know, the individual engineering discretion that the county is going to have as to where rumble strips may exist or where they may not exist down the road still remains, certainly. And so again, the recommendation is to improve the existing conditions above and beyond what's out there currently. And I think that's going to be the case not just for this corridor, but for a lot of corridors within the plan. And going back to Chair Joseph's comment earlier that, you know, this is going to be an iterative process, and it's not necessarily all visionary projects that may take 20 or 30 years. There's stuff that can get done next year or the year after. And there are also projects where we may show in this plan a particular facility type based on the existing speeds of vehicles on the roadway, the volume of vehicles, the type of bicyclists who may be using it, whether it's a primarily recreational or a primarily kind of commuter type corridor. But that recommendation may change when additional engineering work gets done, and it may result that the buffered class 2 on Silverado Trail is actually more appropriate for a different facility type. And that discretion, again, still rests with local jurisdictions when projects get from concept to implementation.
Thank you. All right. Director Alessio.
Yeah, just really quick. Thank you for the presentation, Patrick. This is exciting to have this plan done. A tremendous amount of work went into it, and I want to acknowledge everybody that was a part of that, one way or the other, for taking the time. I guess my question is, and it kind of dovetails with the previous question, is are we connecting this plan with Vision Zero or collision, noted or reported collisions, bike, car, or pedestrian vehicle areas? Are we connecting the dots there?
Absolutely, that is the intent of this plan. And as Executive Director Schmitz mentioned earlier in her ED report, we are initiating kind of a data-based update of the Vision Zero plan that'll be done later this year. The analysis in terms of the appropriate type of facility that was done for this plan, as I just mentioned, takes into account factors such as vehicle speeds and volumes, as well as what the constraints on the roadway may be. And the goal in this plan is first and foremost safety. And so overarching the effort here was to identify a low stress set of corridors, a low stress network, where people of all ages and abilities can get where they want to go and need to go, whether it's on foot or by bike or using other kinds of active transportation mobility devices in really a safe and comfortable manner. So the build out of the plan will take many, many years, but that is the vision and the goals identified in the plan.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other director comments, I'll open the public hearing for any other public comments, either online or in person. Come on down or come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph and board members. My name is Carlota Sainato, and I'm the program manager for the Napa County Bicycle Coalition. We at the Bike Coalition would like to express our support and appreciation for the Active Transportation Plan update. With the current adopted bike plan and pedestrian plan at 7 years old and 10 years old respectively, we're excited to see this comprehensive update bring our countywide active transportation roadmap up to date with current data, standards, and progress. This updated plan will provide Napa County with a wealth of policy, infrastructure, and programming tools to make walking, biking, and rolling safer and more accessible for residents. This plan, its creation, adoption, and implementation really is an investment in our community, as we know that active transportation benefits public health, affordability, climate, community accessibility, and economy. We recognize that this update was no small feat, so we would like to thank NVTA staff for the time and energy that was put into updating this important plan. We've been following the update from the very beginning, and we appreciate all the opportunity provided to the public and community partners like ourselves to provide input and feedback along the way. As we look ahead to meeting with jurisdictions for those last jurisdiction level tweaks before each adopts their individual plans, we are happy to see the updated active transportation plan take its first steps today. Thank you and congratulations on reaching this important milestone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Chair, I'd just like to acknowledge just what a huge lift this was. This started over a year and a half ago. And Patrick, I just want to acknowledge Patrick Bandon as well as Diana Meehan, our planning manager, their efforts meeting with each of your jurisdictions multiple times, meeting with members of the public. This is a culmination of both our pedestrian plan and a bike plan, which have been separate documents and are now under one document. And then Patrick also is very diligent, and he has mapped out, I think we've mapped out the entire bicycle network in the county on a GIS layer, which we've never had before. And so this will make for a lot easier when we're making improvements to the bicycle network. It will be easier just to look at our benchmark GIS map layer of the bike network and then update what has been done between now and 4 years from now or 5 years from now when we update the plan. And then also Emily and GHD staff who's here, we've partnered with them on other plans and they've just been tremendous partners. And so I would just like to say a big kudos to staff.
Thank you. And I would echo those. I think the idea of combining both pedestrian and bicycle into one comprehensive plan is a smart idea in and of itself, but the idea that it is more automated, that this can be more maintained and updated, it will be an excellent planning tool for all the jurisdictions. So I want to echo those remarks. Thank you for your hard work. And if there aren't any other public comments, there isn't a resolution per se. So I guess by minute order.
So
we can
I
just
think
make
it's
a
a
motion.
is it a two-part order, right?
Right.
So we're looking first to determine that the
Yeah.
plan is statutorily exempt from the,
We first need to close the public hearing, I believe, or did we do that, or?
well, maybe, but we just leave it open-ended.
Yeah.
People might get ideas. Good
Right.
point. All right, if there aren't any other comments, then I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing. And then the first one is to approve the CEQA and then the plan? Is that the sequencing?
Right,
Okay. Or can you
yeah.
do a combo?
you could do it, you could,
All right.
Yeah.
Director Sedgley has made a motion to determine the plan is statutorily exempt from CEQA and to consider adoption of the Napa County-wide active transportation plan, inclusive of minor administrative edits as may be identified.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And Manfree wins the second. So with that in mind, may we have a roll call?
Scott Sedgley.
Yes.
Bernie Narvaez.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Amber Manfree. Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Pierre Washington. Pam Reeves, Eric Knight,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
All right, terrific job. Thank you all. Now we move to consent items. We have a number of consent items, and I will entertain a motion to approve them all.
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Narvaez gets the motion and Eisenberg gets the second. We're, we're just moving this puppy. All right, with that in mind, may we have a roll call vote?
Scott Sedgley, Bernie Narvaez, Liz Lucio,
Yes.
Amber Manfree, Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Pierre Washington, Pam Reeves, Eric Knight,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg. Motion passes.
All right, now we are into regular agenda items, and we have two of them. First is a discussion about the Soskel Creek Fish Passage Technical Memorandum Overview.
Yes, I just like to tee this up a little bit. So this item was requested at our last meeting, and staff is bringing back a technical report that was completed as part of the Soskel Junction project. The technical report, I believe Patrick will provide an overview, and then we invited, as mentioned at the last meeting, Napa County Resource Conservation District to provide an update on the fish passage. We have Aaron here from Napa RCD to provide update more on the fish passage, since we are not experts in that realm. So thank you, Grant. Take it away.
Thank you, Executive Director Schmitz. So good afternoon, Chair Joseph, directors of the board. This afternoon, Aaron Fairbrook from Napa RCD and myself will be presenting on the Soskel Junction and Soskel Creek Fish Passage. So if we go to the next slide, just a quick overview. I will cover the Soskel Junction Improvement Project, the goals and some of the accomplishments. The fish passage evaluation, how we got to the point of deciding or needing a fish passage, and the ultimate decision not to just construct that improvement under the Soskel Junction project. And then just as a brief overview of the Soskel Junction project itself, I have a photo here of the completed improvement. There on kind of the middle left side of the page, and then on the bottom right is the Soskel Creek itself. There are two structures that cross it that comprise SR 29. On the bottom, you'll see a lighter gray structure that's a bridge, and then just upstream of that, still in SR 29, is a arch culvert. And then, so I'm sorry, I forgot to note that after I explain the fish passage and how we got to not constructing it, I will hand it off to Aaron to discuss ongoing fish passage efforts and construction throughout the county and at Soskel Creek. Next slide, please. So the Soskel Junction Improvement Project aimed to alleviate traffic at the intersection of State Route 29 and 221, which was a previously signalized intersection. The project elevated SR 29 above the intersection of 221 and Soskel Ferry Road, where two roundabouts were installed and created an interchange. This significantly improved traffic operations, enhanced safety, and improved multimodal connectivity at the intersection. The project overall was $56 million fully delivered. We did reduce congestion and delay that was created by the signalized intersection, and added 1,200 feet of new Class 1 bike and pedestrian facilities through the project. Next slide, please. So when this project initiated design, it was initially a bridge widening of the Soskel Creek Bridge was included in the 65% design. It proposed widening the bridge about 12 feet to accommodate the entry ramp from Soskel Ferry Road. The widening would have required in-channel work to add new structural supports, and that would have triggered environmental permitting. So once we'd identified the widening effort required, we engaged the resource agencies in coordination with Caltrans, and those agencies were the California Fish and Wildlife California Department of Fish and Wildlife, excuse me, and the National Marine Fisheries Service. The initial improvements that we had designed in the 65%, in addition to the bridge widening, included downstream fish passage improvements, which I will show on the next slide. So that was the plan view previously. This is a profile. So if we start on the far right-hand side of the screen, we have a dotted line that shows the original and what is currently out there today, Susquehanna Creek Bridge. The solid line just to the right of that shows the proposed improvements under the 65% design. And then as we move further left, a series of pools that would have constituted a fish passage and improved fish mobility through the stream and upstream beyond SR 29. Next slide, please. As we engaged the resource agencies, there was consensus that there was a need for an improvement of fish passage type. However, we could not reach consensus on the details themselves. There was various perspectives around what improvements should be made, and Caltrans was adamant that any improvements made could not touch the existing arch box culvert, as it may compromise the structural integrity. As we moved through the consultation phase in 65 and 95% design and resolution couldn't be made, this started to introduce a risk to our schedule and delivery path for the project, which could have had ramifications on significant grant funding available for the project. And so rather than prolong the consultation process, NVTA looked for alternatives that would have allowed us to not build the bridge widening. We were able to find one through a design exception, through Caltrans design exception, through their design exception process. We were granted that exception, which allowed us to have a little bit narrower shoulder at the bridge, and ultimately allowed us to not widen the bridge. As we didn't widen the bridge, there were no impacts to the creek, which means we didn't trigger environmental permitting, and therefore no mitigation through the fish passage improvements. Next slide, please. While the fish passage wasn't constructed, NVTA did contribute over $1.1 million in environmental mitigation through this Sosco Junction project. That $1.1 million went to habitat creation for red-legged frog in Napa County, as well as purchase of nesting credit and foraging credit for the Swainson's hawk in other locations within California. Next slide, please. Again, while the fish passage wasn't built into the Sosco Junction project, it remains an important improvement on the radar of resource agencies within Napa County and the state, and leading that effort to further fish passage improvements throughout the county is Napa Resource Conservation District. I'm going to hand it off to Aaron to talk more about that.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Aaron Fairbrook. I'm with Napa RCD. Next slide, please. And I'm going to talk about bridging roads and rivers, a path forward for fish passage in Napa County. Next slide, please. So building off of what Grant just presented, the fish passage was evaluated and ultimately not constructed. And there's a lot of permitting complexity. It's expensive. There's schedules to be considered. And so that makes me step back and say, but how do we still solve this problem of the fish passage? Next slide, please. And this is always a problem where transportation meets fish habitat. And it just isn't a Susquehanna issue. It's Napa River watershed wide. It may even be worldwide, depending on where all the migratory fish are. And many of these fish barriers occur at the road crossings, and usually it's culverts. And you can see from this picture, culverts sometimes create these head cuts or waterfalls that create this huge jump for fish to make through those little pipes. Or sometimes the pipes are like putting your thumb over a garden hose where there's so much velocity, they just can't swim through it. And so it becomes a barrier. And so a bridge is one option. It can be an expensive option, but it is a good option for fish to be able to get through up into the habitat. So the key point here is that the fish reaching the habitat really depends on the transportation infrastructure. Next slide, please. And not all crossings work for fish. You can see the ford up there on the top left. It looks good, no culvert, no barriers, but how many cars are passing through there? And is it stirring up sediment that's gonna suffocate eggs or reds of the salmon and create an issue later? Or, you know, and there's all kinds of different culverts. They come in all shapes and sizes. And again, it's constricting the flow of the creek, creating that faster velocities so the fish can't get through it, or there's a head cut and they just can't jump. So yes, culverts are the most common barrier. Next slide, please. And Napa River supports migratory fish. There's over 50 fish species in Napa River and the estuary, and we have steelhead, which are threatened, and Chinook salmon that use these Napa River as transportation to get up to these upstream habitat areas that are critical for them to spawn and complete their cycle. Next slide, please. Napa River watershed, we have 31 major tributaries. There's 146 stream miles that the fish can get to, which is great. But there's also 76 miles of streams with limited access. And that's like you trying to drive to work and your road is blocked and you can't get to work anymore. So it's kind of a bummer for the fish because it is so critical for them. And because of these barriers, their populations will decline. Next slide, please. So Napa RCD wrote a grant. We got funded through NOAA and the Wildlife Conservation Board for about $7 million. And part of this program is to do an assessment of 31 fish barriers. And that is looking at, you know, where are these barriers at? How many fish are using this system? How is it compared to the other barriers? How expensive is it to remove? We're looking at all different kinds of factors. And we're going to drop that from 31 to the top 10. And we're going to look at options on what can we do to fix this. You know, pretty much like a 10% design or concept ideas of what we can do, which will further drop it to maybe 2 or 3 designs that we have funding to put to 100% designs and get the permitting done. And it's ready to go for the next phase, which means I got to write more grants to find implementation funds to do it. We also have some designs underway right now on Sulphur Canyon or Soda Canyon Creek and Pickle Canyon Creek. And we also just finished designs on Sulphur Creek and implemented it. And I'll get to that in a minute. I got some photos. It's great. But the excellent part about this funding is that it is creating a pipeline of projects. We're getting some designs ready to go to hit the next phase. So now I'll have these top 10 that I can keep looking for design funds while also looking for implementation funding to keep it going. It's also supporting our ongoing fish monitoring. How many fish are in the system? Is our restoration efforts making a difference? So monitoring is always important. And just to tie it back to Susquehanna Creek, we don't have to wait for the culvert to fail at the Susquehanna Junction in 40 or 50 years where it needs to be addressed or fixed. We can address fish passage now, just building off the current design. Next slide, please. So this is Sulphur Creek. We're pretty excited about. We just finished it. You can see that back in the day, they would add these fish ladders to help fish get up through the system, but these systems are basically a headache because it's a ton of maintenance. They fill with gravel, they fill with boulders and logs. Who's going to maintain it? And where's that money coming from? So it's more like a Band-Aid. We came in and did a design and implemented with a new bridge. That old bridge was also constricting flows as well, kind of like that thumb over the hose again. We've opened it up, we've added some native vegetation, and now fish can get up into that system. Next slide. This is a little barrier on Susquehanna Creek because part of our funding also has us being able to remove 4 smaller barriers in the Napa River watershed. And so we chose Susquehanna Creek as one of them. This was a small barrier that we removed back in 2024, and it doesn't look like a barrier, but again, when those high flows go up, it's very high velocity, and they can't swim through that. And so now it's removed, and now it's better. Next slide, please. We've also, I have this slide because it's not a barrier necessarily, but it's starting to tell a story about Susquehanna Creek. We just wrote some grants for some planning and design to look at this area near the mouth of Susquehanna Creek. We're working with the Napa Sanitation District and just looking at how we can enhance this area for sea level rise. The Napa Vine Trail is going along the edge. Is there some educational opportunities we can add to this? And how can we make it better for wildlife and to protect our infrastructure? But this is all in Susquehanna Creek, and so we're starting to tell the story here. We're trying to focus on this watershed a bit. Next slide, please. And so right now we have this existing design that Grant just talked about, and it's creating a great foundation for a retrofit. We have, Napa RCD has funding to refine this design and get 100% designs and permits for this approach. And we can improve fish passage now instead of waiting 40 to 50 years when that culvert needs to be addressed. So next steps, we are hoping to work with and coordinate with Caltrans and talk about the project with the permitting agencies and see if we can get them on board. And then just build on our existing partnerships as we do these types of projects. Next slide, please. So we have the funding, the partnerships, and the approach. We just need to keep moving forward. And I know this slide is extremely busy, but there's 31 barriers, and I wanted to give some pictures of a quick overview of what some of those look like, and what we can address in the future to help our salmon. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. As what I'm understanding is that we had maybe 65% design for improvements there. And the hangup sounds more like the regulatory agencies weren't all on the same page. And I think it was prudent on our part to say, okay, let's just focus on the junction and leave fish passage to someone else, RCD perhaps. If going forward, I guess RCD, your role would be to be more patient than we are because we had some time constraints, so you could work with the regulatory agencies and convince somebody to.
We would be willing to talk with the regulatory agencies. It's that was a big project, a transportation project. Well, this is now more of a fish passage project, and maybe we can talk them into. They like to fund projects that are going to last forever, right? We all do.
Yeah.
But this one, this is a retrofit approach that could help fish for 40 to 50 years. And I think that's a pretty strong argument that we would be willing to talk to the permitting agencies about that and see if they can get on board.
Yeah. Because it seems to me, I mean, obviously it would be better to improve the passage than to just not deal with it. Wearing my NVTA project management hat, I would say, yeah, it was probably better to leave it alone. But now that that's done, I'm certainly sympathetic. What specifically is being asked of the NVTA board, or is this more educational and informative?
This is an informational item being brought back at the request of a few board member questions from last meeting.
And the technical, the 65% design, is that something we could give to RCD and say, this will help?
Yes.
There's no copyright or engineering rights or any of that stuff?
No, NVTA owns all work that is prepared by our consultants, and I think we'd be happy to share that with RCD.
Sounds very good. Any questions or comments from the board?
I do have some questions. Thank you so much for bringing this back for us today. And thank you. It was very informative. And it does seem as though we have a great deal of leverage to be gained from having a recently completed plan for fish passage at the Susquehanna Creek at Highway 29 overcrossing. Like that's pretty meaningful to have that work already done. And it would be a shame to see it languish and become outdated and just get missed. So just generally expressing support for that in my various hats that I get to wear. You said there were 31 barriers on the Napa River. Those are public barriers, not private?
They're on both
Okay.
public and private, and there may be more. We're still looking.
Yeah, for sure. I know they pop up sometimes. And then do you have any sense, and I understand if you didn't come prepared for this question, but of about how many barriers there are per jurisdiction? Because this being cities, and the county, each of us probably has things in our jurisdictions that we might be a little more concerned about because we kind of own them.
Right. I could share a map at a
Okay.
later time and provide that information later. I don't have it with me today.
Okay, that's fine. I think that might be helpful for people to know, just to know like what's, how good or bad is the situation for us and nearer our homes. And then, it occurs to me, and I know you know this, but didn't mention it, but that there's multiple benefits for these kinds of projects so that it's not just maybe we get a bridge replaced a little sooner than its actual fail date, plus we get a fish passage barrier benefit plus terrestrial animal passage, and quite often a flood benefit as well, because we're able to, slow flows or, there's all kinds of things that happen. Like if you think about the work that happened downtown, we ended up getting beavers back downtown, which is crazy, but great. And, and you're slowing water down as it makes its way through the valley. And that has this kind of, even if it happens in a small way, if it happens all over the place, a significant buffering of the worst flood impacts once all that water gets downtown. So I guess I kind of want to throw that out there. But other question, I guess, am I missing any benefits?
Salmon help grow trees. So the fish get up into the upper watersheds, animals grab the carcasses, they eat it, and they decompose. And those trees get all those nutrients from the ocean. So it actually helps our trees grow.
Oh, that's a good one.
But I'm sure there's a bunch of other benefits, but you've nailed a bunch of them already. So
Yeah. And also lampreys, and we could potentially get sturgeons in this system. They don't usually go into tiny streams, but they might come up. And then what are your top priorities beyond the ones you mentioned that you're already working on at Pickle Creek and Soda Canyon Creek? And how are they set? Like what makes something a high priority for the RCD?
there's a bunch of variables we're looking at. The assessment process is probably going to go till November, and then we'll have a top 10. And it's a wide variety of variables that they're looking at. Some of the barriers we have removed already is these are smaller barriers, but one on Huchica, one on Susquel, one on Carneros Creek, and we're looking at doing one on Dry Creek this summer, working with the flood district.
And one on York a while back.
Yeah, it may have been before my time. I'm a little bit new, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we are making really significant progress on this locally, and there is a major nexus for transportation, which is, why I asked for this to come here today. So thank you for all that.
All right. Any other comments from the board? Director Sedgley.
Thank you. Yeah, the design to remove the barrier out there, but being part of the transportation project, I can understand that, maybe falling off. And I'm not an engineer and I'm not an expert in removing fish barriers, but is the bridge replacement the only design option to remove that barrier or improve it?
On Highway 29?
Susquel?
No, the retrofit is, it's something that could be looked at in the future, 50 years from now when the culvert needs to be fixed. But right now it's just that step pool that Grant showed as an option so that the fish can get up to that gradient and have an easier time getting through that culvert.
Right. Yeah, the old ladder concept of some kind, I guess.
Yeah, more natural ladder. They call it more of a roughened channel with pools and areas that the fish can scamper up easier than a fish ladder that needs maintenance.
So the 65% that we talked about design being done, that was for the bridge replacement.
That included the bridge replacement and a preliminary design for the.
So there might be something useful in that work,
Yeah.
but maybe
Yeah.
not.
And there's a report that was generated to detail, various conditions in the creek once the fish passage was created and modeled. So that's something we could happily share with RCD as well.
Thanks. And hopefully in the assessment that it might already be in the top 10, but I think this is a critical one down there because of its location on one of the first confluences other than Huachica or Carneros as the fish are coming up river. So it's probably,
It is. That's why we wanted to talk today. It is one of the high priority sites for us. And again, we're starting to tell that story of working in this watershed, which I think the regulatory agencies will be more inclined to want to hear us out and be on board.
and Fish and Wildlife obviously is the biggest hurdle on regulatory, but I imagine Caltrans has something to do with it too, because we'd be working in and around their infrastructure. So I think this body can help kind of lobby Caltrans to consider, what they have to say about this barrier removal. Maybe not funding it as a highway project, but I think we could definitely lobby to help that regulatory agency along to get something done, because I think we would be responsible to get that done. So thank you.
Yes, and it sounds more like the project contemplated is the step pools or whatever, and not necessarily the culvert, which
Right.
theoretically means Caltrans shouldn't have that much of an issue, which is always good. So
That's wishful thinking.
I believe that if you can't be naive, you're just gonna be surprised a lot or something. So the idea is that this would be a lot less expensive too. I'm
It
assuming.
could be. Some of the information and the data that they collected for the initial design is already there. So.
All right, well, good. We have Director Alessio with a comment.
Just really quick, I want to thank Director Manfrey for bringing this back for us. I thought this is very informative. And I echo the comments from Member Sedgley. If this agency can do something to help advocate and connect with Caltrans or other agencies, I say we can move forward with that support.
Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? All right.
I just wanted to say, with a name like Fairbrook, you're in the right profession. Thank you for that. That's
you.
unbelievable. Did you change your name to get the job?
No.
No, that's your calling. So thank you for the comprehensive report. Very educational for me.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, then, just to summarize, it seems like there's a consensus that whatever we can do to help is, sharing information, any kind of contacts, things like that, all that kind of informal assistance. I think at least the board, I'm gonna just put words in your mouth, that I think the board would be sympathetic to getting this project accomplished if we're not writing big checks and if we're trying to just use our connections and whatever we have to work with you. So again, thank you for the report. It was very informative. It's exciting to know that RCD is trying to deal with problems while we're trying to deal with congestion. So thank you. All right. Now we move to 10.2, the Vine Transit update. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair Joseph, members of the board. I'm Rebecca Schenk. I'm the Director of Transit here at the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and I'm going to give you a transit update on the third quarter of fiscal year 25-26. So that would be January through March. So as Laura's pulling it up here, what we're going to talk about first is kind of a revamped newsletter that we've put out that you all have received. We're going to talk some about recent outreach efforts, show you a little video. Oftentimes, our board meetings are obviously during the day. So I'm going to start bringing you kind of Q&As that we're doing with some riders who aren't available to come at these particular meetings. We're going to talk about our fleet transition and what that's looking like overall as we transition from gas, lean and diesel more towards hybrid, CNG, and electric buses. And then we'll obviously go over ridership. So if you move ahead 2 slides there, we have had for a long time a bi-monthly newsletter related to V-Commute. V-Commute is our different commuter programs, so things like van pool, ways to track your alternative transportation rides, bucks for bikes, etc. And V-Commute and those other commute programs came under transit at the beginning of this year, so leading back to January. And so kind of working some with our bilingual outreach coordinator, we determined that it made sense to kind of expand that newsletter. We're just doing it monthly. We're calling it the Vine Times, but it touches V-Commute plus Vine, Vine Go, and our taxi script program. And so the first one we put out was in February. We're now issuing this monthly. We're going to start to track things like deliveries, opens, et cetera, trying to get kind of a wider audience for this. And as part of it, we're profiling different riders, drivers, and NVTA staff. And this rider wasn't in our newsletter, but on the next slide, I'm going to show you a short little video of a student that we have and a little interview we did with him. And if it doesn't end up working, we can maybe share it later or do some other variation therein. That's okay. Okay. So we'll share that, but basic gist of it, this is a middle schooler who periodically, or actually very consistently, rides our buses. He knows more than most of the people on some level that work here on a daily basis. He is tracking our fleet transition. He's tracking our CAD AVL system. He knows where he'd like to see routes come and go. So he has an interesting perspective to share. So we'll move on to our fleet transition. And what we'll see is our fleet really has changed a lot. And this kind of gets to Director Doring's question before about fuel. So going back to June of 2020, kind of lists out the different diesel, CNG, hybrid, gasoline, electric buses we had at that time. So kind of the important part here is that we kind of started looking at it. We knew that we would be, the CARB mandate would apply to us starting on July 1 of 2025, where we'd have to start purchasing at least 25% of our new purchases would have to be electric. But well before that, right? And this is kind of being June 30th of 2025 where we stood. So we went, before being even mandated by CARB, we went from having 0 electric buses to having 19. We really decreased our number of gasoline vehicles. We increased our number of hybrid vehicles. We released those 4 from Golden Gate Transit. We increased our number of CNG buses, which although not electric buses, obviously have been shown to have kind of lower particulate matter, and nitrous oxide output than our diesel, and really decreased our diesel buses. And then based upon the budget that you approved earlier today and some of the grants that we have, we're really going to continue to transition our fleet, right? We'll continue to have a lower number of diesel buses and upping our hybrid and our electric buses. So just, you sometimes get these individual bus purchases that you're seeing, but it is really changing our overall fleet in quite a short amount of time. So on the next slide, we have outreach, and it's also some of the upcoming ones are in your packet. This is us at the 8th grade career fair. So at the 8th grade career expo, it was just across the street there, so very convenient for us. But all of the middle schools is sponsored by NCOE. So from Calistoga to American Canyon, we're at this event. It was a good opportunity for us to meet middle schoolers. And then on the next slide, what you'll see is what Director Schmitz talked about in her report earlier, which was our Valley Oak field trip. Valley Oak is a alternative high school here in Napa, and they're looking at different career opportunities. Director Deasy helped us make this connection, and this is David, our maintenance manager. We really tried to profile people that they could relate to. So for example, David went to Shear Elementary in Napa, Harvest Middle School, and then Vintage before going on to further education. So we hope that some of maybe these kids could follow a similar path. Also on outreach on the next slide, we wanted to touch not only on things like what's happening with our in-person outreach, but we are always trying also on social media to make these outputs. You'll see when we were doing our bus stop tours to our different schools, or when just trying to promote this message, you know, the gas right now, at least as we put this, was about $5.75 a gallon and rising. But if you were to hop on the bus, we're still $2. So don't forget about us. And then in terms of ridership, so what you'll see coming up is we had made some changes in August, so wanted to give you a little 6-month update. So in orange, you see the 11X as it stood last year. And then in teal, you see the 11X in ridership this year. So it seems like, well, it is overall that we increased our ridership month over month, with the exception of January, but the other months we had a significant enough increase in our ridership on the 11X. So we feel like that was an overall positive change. And then on the next slide, the next change we made on the Route 29 is we started offering Saturday service. So month over month, we're seeing increases. November, that outlier just happens to be a date problem in terms of there were 5 Saturdays as opposed to 4 in November. But we'll be continuing to monitor this, and then we'll make a decision come August whether or not we would continue Saturday service. That's our current pilot, or maybe we have to go back to just weekdays. So that decision pending. And then coming up next, overall, what you'll see is our third quarter ridership comparison. So you'll see from back to fiscal year 21 through 26. So our highlights is our City of Napa, our kind of local and on demand. We did really see a nice increase there with our Route 11X and our 29 quarter 3, looking back numerous quarters. We're going to monitor that Route 10 and Route 11 in terms of what happened there with the first decrease that we have seen quarter over quarter on both of those routes. Then on the next slide, nothing really to monitor there in terms of Vinego, Calistoga Shuttle, Yountville B, American Canyon Transit, et cetera, all increased. American Canyon Transit, I think, was really driven by, we've increased the hours. It goes later into the evening till 7 p.m. and then also on Saturdays starting in February. So we're very excited about what that yielded. And then in Yountville, we're seeing more veterans travel down from the veterans home to the town of Yountville when we look at their pairs. And then finally, I think we're up to questions and answers, and just one little note to leave you with. Thank you.
Very, very good final thing about 30 people who aren't driving in front of you. So
In their individual car.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much for the report. I appreciate the fact that over time you keep kind of tweaking the process and making things more effective. That is definitely noticed by me, and I appreciate it. Any questions from the board? All right, go ahead.
Just a question on, you know, a big audience, I think, for potential ridership are students. And I know that we're doing some, you know, work with the school district, but whatever the city of Napa and Napa Valley Unified being the biggest district in the county, that we can tap into that resource. How do we, I got a letter from a student the other day that she walked to Vintage from way down on Sosco. She didn't have any, and so I told her, I tried to help her with the ride, but she was hoping the city could just provide a bus for Vintage High School students from her neighborhood. I said, well, it's not that simple, but I think as this board needs to continue to work with to somehow, you know, convince our students and the parents of our students that it's safe to ride the bus, it's reliable. And, you know, we've kind of got away from that. When we were all children, or maybe I'm the oldest one here in the room, there was a bus service provided by the school district, but I think that's a resource of ridership we could really start to focus on. And, you know, I kind of proposed a free, you know, pilot program on bus transportation, but I understand that has its challenges. But yeah, we just need to come to, and I think I was talking to Danielle about coming to those meetings, those joint meetings with, we have quarterly with the school district and the city, but
We'd be happy to attend. Just let us know.
yeah.
We've also have separate meetings with the school district that we've met with Rob Manduela,
Right.
who's their director of operations. I believe we are going to, and Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong, start serving Silverado Middle School.
I read that one.
Yeah, that's our goal for August, is that specifically after school, that we are going to go up there at least 2 to 3 times as part of our Route B circulator. So people going from the Westwood neighborhood over, because what we hear is the school district does provide, once Harvest closed, transportation, say to and from school. They meet at a few locations where Harvest used to be and bring kids over, but that means you have to go home at the end of school at 3:20. So if you don't have a ride, you can't stay for, I don't know, soccer, the play,
Right.
whatever your interest is. So we're going to try to meet that need. But I think if we also had the city support, that we could coordinate much better with Marin Transit probably being the ultimate, to say, hey, let the school district lets us know if they're going to change schedules, and how can we have better service to Vintage. If they have a lot of students that are now coming from a particular segment, maybe we can make a tweak to the Route E, things like that. So we'd love to do that.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Dr. Smith.
Hi, I just have a quick question. You're doing so amazing with all of your younger riders. Do you have any numbers on older adults who are taking the bus? And do you have some specific outreach that you're doing to get to that community?
Sure. I don't think that I know on, say, who's, riding the bus in terms of how many seniors. I will say that every quarter we're seeing our VineGo increase, and we are definitely actually doing some rebidding of our VineGo drivers right now to get some additional drivers, because we're really seeing that demand increase. We did, if we could just go back to our outreach and different events that we've been at as of late. Sorry, where am I? Oh, we did do a couple of things that I guess maybe focused a little more on seniors, which was just when we were going up to the Greystone kind of health and resource fair, which was a little more focused on Up Valley. But right, we do have a lot of younger things, so we will take note, and we'll include in our next update all the different feedback and rides that Dexter, who is handling our multimodal or planning work, is doing, and we'll be sure to include that.
And I'm also happy to work with Dexter and give him resources.
Okay. Yeah, happy to attend any event.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Then any public comments, either online or in person? Very good report. It seems like everyone is satisfied. So thank you very much for your report, and we look forward to next quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that gets us to future agenda items. Anything a board member in particular would like to see addressed? Okay, then with that, we are now going to go into closed session. Do we need any special announcements?
Yeah, just the board's entering into closed session on the 2 items agendized, anticipated litigation and conference with legal counsel, existing litigation regarding a government claim filed by Monica Lynn Harris.